right? That's the type of rich I'm thinking I need to be in order to be happy. So I start thinking, okay, in order to really enjoy my life to the maximum, right, what I need to do is get the most amount of money with the minimum amount of effort, right? So why do I want to work hard for my money? Because that means I'm going to spend all my time working instead of my time enjoying. So that's a waste of time. So what I'm starting to think is my analytical mind starts kicking in. I start thinking, okay, let's look at history now. Who are the richest people in the world, right? And who did the least amount of work in order to get their money, right? So I started thinking, right, let's start with England, good old England, British Empire, Industrial Revolution, fifth richest country in the world. Oh man, that's just way too much hard work. Industrial Revolution, capitalism, industry, this and that, conquest and, empire. And forget that, man. Germany, oh my God, the Germans, they work hard. And the Japanese, all they do is work. Forget the Japanese, right? Americans, the American dream, what's the American dream? You're a self-made millionaire, but you have to rise from the gutter and you make it for yourself. And again, it's just hard work. And then it hit me. Oh my God, those Saudi Arabians. They've been sitting on their camels, right? Allahu Akbar, right? Praying to Allah, right? And they got all that wealth and all that money and all that work, and they did nothing. I said, that's the one. Maximum money, minimum work. I like that. Right? I swear, brothers and sisters, I swear that's the truth. All right? And I said, right, okay, Saudi Arabia. Okay, let's find out about these guys. They've got something, right? That's not coincidence. I don't believe that they got that oil just for nothing. There must be a reason that oil is there. So I started thinking, okay, Saudi Arabia, what's their religion? Oh, Islam. Yeah, I know that. I know Islam. A little bit about Islam, right? Quran, I know that's their book. So I went down there and, I picked up the Quran. Anyway, I can say I picked up a translation of the Quran in English, okay? And I started to read it. Okay, I started to read the Quran in English. Now, I used to be, and I probably still am, a pretty fast reader. I can read, but the reason is because when we lived in Egypt, the TV was so rubbish, right? It was so bad, right? In fact, the TV set, it had this thick dust on it, right? It didn't get turned on, it didn't get used, it just used to sit there because we never used to watch it. And as a family, what did we used to do? We did a lot of reading, a lot of reading. Just to give you an idea how fast I can read. There's a book called Roots. You ever heard of that book, Roots, Alex Haley? Someone's shaking his head, old school brother there, alhamdulillah. Roots is a big, thick book, Harry Potter size, right? Okay, but it's a bit heavier than Harry Potter, I read like 3/4 of Roots in half a night. Okay? Yeah, okay, I admit that I had just finished Carrie by Stephen King and I was so terrified I couldn't sleep, right? And I had to read through Roots just to take it out of my head. But I could still read that fast, right? Now the Quran, in terms of the actual words, it is about, it depends how you count the words actually, but it's about 100,000 words long. Now that is not a lot. That's not a lot. 100,000 words is not a lot. It is about the size of a, medium to small size novel these days, in terms of actual words, right? 2 weeks after picking the Quran up, I was still reading it and I still hadn't finished it. It was a book unlike I had ever read before. I mean, first of all, it doesn't have any structure that we're used to, right? It begins, with Surah Al-Fatiha, and then it goes, to talk about in Surah Al-Baqarah. It talks about the hypocrites and who are these people who they say they believe and then they don't believe. And then it goes to talk about Moses and, the cow and, how the people said, the Moses said slaughter a cow and they said which cow, and then it's like, then it goes on to something else, and then the table, you got the next surah which is like full of, there's no consistency. It's like, that's the first thing. It doesn't follow like what we're used to. We like in the beginning, this happened, and then in the end, that happened, right? But there's no beginning and end, right? There's no beginning and end to the Quran, right? Because actually, there's a reason there's no beginning and end. And so I'm reading through it, and I keep having to go and, because I really wanted to understand. It wasn't just about reading it. I really wanted to understand what the Quran was saying. What was this all about? And so I had to read and reread and go back, and I'd get so far and then go back and check something else that was from before. And so it was taking me a long, long time to get through the Quran. But what was happening at the same time is my brain was being put into, it was working, it was like those old rusty cogs, and it was making me think in a way that I'd never thought before. And I remember until this day, I remember very clearly that I was taking the train to work, and I worked in the city at the time as a life assurance salesman. So I was traveling from my home at the time, and I was traveling to work, and I remember very distinctly this epiphany, this moment where something hits you. And I was sitting in the train, I looked out of the window, we're just crossing the Thames, the River Thames. I looked back and I said to myself, if I have ever read a book that's from God, this is the one. And I remember that day, that was the time when I thought, yes, this is the one. This is it. If I've ever got my hands on a book that is from God, it's this. I remember that night, I went back home and I was thinking, okay, I need to start praying. The Quran talks about prayer, but actually the Quran doesn't really tell you how to pray. It just says to pray. It gives you a few details. And, I used to remember, okay, how did Ibrahim pray? Yeah, I remember he used to stand and bow and prostrate. And I didn't remember how much he used to do, but it used to take about 5-10 minutes, So I went there and I would just do these things. And the Quran describes about washing your hands and washing your arms and your face. So I used to wash before I prayed. Each time, every time, And this went on like this. I would pray in the morning, I'd pray in the evening, I wasn't even sure how many times I was supposed to pray, because again, it's not actually detailed clearly in the Quran. So I was doing these things, and this went on for a couple of weeks. And then it happened that I had to go to a part of London I was not used to. And, it was one of those things. I came out of the underground station, and I was supposed to turn left. I didn't turn left. I just happened to turn right. And I walked along, and there was a bookshop. And in the bookshop were all these books in Arabic and English, and they were about Islam, and they were about, so I thought, that looks, I have to come and have a look at that. So I went off to do what I had to do, went back the other way. And I said, I came back, and I went in the bookshop. I want to tell you something. I looked pretty much the same then as I did now, right? Because I was a bit thinner, okay? I was quite a lot thinner, actually, okay? But I had long hair and I had a beard, because I was a bit of a hippie, remember? Okay? So I was still into this, this one love and this and that stuff, right? Okay. Okay, so there I was, but the difference was I was a hippie wearing a pinstripe suit. So I had my suit and, my tie and my briefcase, and there I was, and so I went inside this bookshop and was looking at all these books, and all these books about Islam and Muhammad, and my eyes were going everywhere. Wow, right? This looks fantastic. So I'm standing there, and someone comes up to me and says, "Excuse me, are you a Muslim?" So I said, "What do you mean Muslim?" He said, "I don't know about that. I tell you what. I believe there is only one God, which is Allah, and I believe Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." He said, "You're a Muslim." I said, "Oh, thank you very much." And he said, "What? That's fantastic. You're a Muslim." I said, "Oh, great." So he says, "Why don't you come and pray?" So, he shows me how to make wudu, and I'm making wudu, and then I go and stand and pray. I think it was actually Friday. It must have actually been Friday, because the mosque was full, right? The mosque was only full on Friday, right? Okay. So the mosque was full, and there I was praying. I didn't know what everyone was doing. I was like, okay, let's get this right, I got the basic idea, but it was not like what, I didn't know the order of stuff, right? So, but I do remember, anyway, after the prayer, I think I took Shahada with the Imam. I don't really remember. It was all a bit of a blur, to tell you the truth. And I went downstairs afterwards, and it was fantastic. Every Muslim brother wanted to teach me the entirety of Islam in 5 minutes, right? And they would give me, they're saying, "Brother," they literally gave me bits of, they were writing the prayer out for me, right? And saying, here's this, here's this. And they gave me, I had all these bits of paper with me about how to pray and this and that. But I do remember that everyone was just absolutely fantastic. They were so nice. I have to say, it was more or less an Arab mosque. And the Arabs, mashallah, they tend to be very welcoming like that, okay? And really, they treated me really fantastic. You know, and I remember coming out of that feeling like I'd got this shower from the inside. I was feeling really good, really fantastic. And I said, man, I'm feeling high, man. Forget this marijuana stuff, man. This is woo, this is good, right? Anyway, 2 weeks, I'm going back and forth. I'm running to the mosque. I'm really trying to get to that mosque as much as possible. It's the only mosque I knew about. It was actually quite far to get to, but, I went there and I was making friends and this and that. Anyway, the time came to see my girlfriend. I haven't mentioned my girlfriend yet, okay? But she gets a mention now, right? Okay, what can we say? She was studying in a university that was quite far away from London. And I used to go and visit her quite regularly. And I was working in the city in London, so it was about time I was going to go and visit. So what I did, went on the train, went up to Bristol, down to Bristol actually. Went to, met her at the train station, went to the house and, went into the bathroom, right? Okay, made wudu, she didn't see that. And I just sort of thought, okay, started praying, right? So my girlfriend's sitting on the bed, right? And I'm finishing my prayers. And I turn around. She says, what are you doing? I said, oh yeah, I became Muslim. You what? I'm exaggerating a bit there, okay? But she did scream. She did scream. She did scream, yeah. She screamed enough, and she was upset enough for something to happen, which was, in many ways, a very important thing that happened in my life. A very sad thing, but a very important thing. I'm sure any one of you, which I hope, the Muslims, I do not wish this upon anyone. I do not wish upon my sons or my daughters or any Muslim to get into this whole girlfriend, boyfriend rubbish, because it is rubbish, right? It is heart-rendering, it's soul-destroying, right? There is nothing nice about it except perhaps the sex, right? Okay, but all the other stuff that comes along with it, right? The jealousy, I'm just being honest, sorry if it embarrassed anyone. The jealousy, the stuff that comes with it, it's just terrible. It really is terrible, okay? And I don't wish that upon any human being, in fact. What I wish upon human beings is that they do what is right, the right thing to do, and that's to get married. Right? If someone cares about you, you should get married and you should live together and you should share a life together, and that's what you should do, right? And that's something that God has given blessings to, right? Whereas as for this girlfriend, boyfriend stuff, anyway. So what happened was I stopped practicing Islam because I was afraid that if I kept practicing Islam, I would lose her. And at the time, really in reality, she was probably, in terms of my personal relationships, the most important human being to me in my life. And we had a truly amazing relationship. The other thing which I haven't discussed, of course, like I suppose any thinking teenager will think a lot about love and what is love and what does love mean. And that was another thing that I was totally obsessed with. And I thought I'd found love with her. And, I don't want to go into it, but it was very intense and we were very, very close. And so when she freaked out, it was like, okay, I'm going to have to put this on the side and this and that and whatever. And anyway, I just gave up practicing Islam. I didn't say I wasn't Muslim anymore. In fact, I remember that once I was at a party and I was so drunk and I was sitting there talking to people about Islam. And there was this group of 5 or 6 people. There was 5 or 6 people and I was telling them, Islam is really good and you have to read the Quran and this, and they were going, yeah, tell us more, right? And I was saying, I can't, I'm just too drunk. Read the Quran, yeah, it's good, right?